Hello, I'm Chelsea, and welcome to This is Hard to Say. I'm here to talk about topics that are hard to say, which was originally birthed in 2020 from my lifelong eating disorder. I would love to educate people on disordered eating and also create a platform for us to talk about hard things like trauma, childhood, even simple interactions in our day-to-day life, joy, art. So this really is for all humans. And with that, we'll get going. Have you ever put a project down thinking, oh, I'll get to that next week, and then next week happens and you don't get to it, and then the next week happens and you don't get to it, and that continues on, and then you're intimidated by the project? Yeah, that was me with this podcast. It had nothing to do with not loving doing it, but really the hurdles that were in the way of me completing the podcast, which came around to editing things and making it way more complicated for myself than it needed to be, including taking a video while recording the podcast. And so today I have no video. I am posting the video version with captions, but I'm not in it. And also I'm recording on my phone today. I'm not even using a microphone. And another reason for that is because I couldn't get the sound to work for some reason. And it was one of those hurdles where I just didn't want to spend the time to figure it out. So with all that to say, I'm really happy to be back. And today I will be talking about how I stay in recovery from having an eating disorder. I actually do have other podcasts that are in the lineup for being posted, but I have some glitches in them that I can't figure out how to fix. I may post them anyways and just move forward with the show, so stay tuned. We'll see how that works out. Before I get into the podcast, a little life update is that my winter was incredibly busy. It was so overwhelmingly busy that I really hardly had time for anything else but trying to rest after a long day and working my face off. And on top of that, I was just incredibly tired. You know how winter comes around and you have the urge to just crawl into the cave and sleep? I had it every single day. So I really struggled to come back to this podcast and actually make this happen because I was overworked and overtired. And when spring opened up, I started to feel better. And in March, I had my 40th birthday, which was a big milestone for me. But the reality was that I felt sad about turning 40, and I felt kind of lost in life. I felt proud of this project and proud of the work I've done in graphic design and in art and all the other areas of life I've experienced greatness. But overall, I just felt kind of lost. Like, am I going to keep doing this for the rest of my life? Because it's not really working the way I thought it would. Or do I follow that flow and see where it leads me? And one desire I had had is to become a moxibustion practitioner. And what moxibustion is a type of Chinese medicine where they take refined mugwort and they burn it on acupuncture points. It is heating and there's contraindications, but the point is that I really was loving that medicine, and I had been doing it on myself for a few years, and my relationship to mugwort as a plant was strong and had been for a long time. And I thought that was a way I could find some healing for myself and my community. But as time went on, I realized that there isn't really any kind of rules or regulations around just being a moxibustion practitioner, and I didn't really know where to start or how to do it. And the more I thought and watched the world happen before my eyes in a devastating way, I realized that I wanted to be more community-oriented and not just in an artistic way. So I finally came to terms with the fact that I wanted to study Chinese medicine. I had benefited so greatly from acupuncture and had great experiences with one of my good friends showing me different ways of healing yourself through that medicine, and also being my doctor for a long time. And I just felt very connected to that style of healing. And at the end of the day, I wanted medicine for myself and for my people because that's how I thought I could help the world. If I can help my small little community, I can at least maybe trickle out into the greater web of the world. And so my friend, who's a Chinese doctor, said, hey, why don't you check out Yosan in LA? And she said it a few times to me to where it finally clicked. So I applied in April, and it was the tail end of my extremely busy winter and coming to terms with the fact that I had turned 40 and I felt like I was going to turn my life upside down and basically change everything about how I was living. I started in May, I'm going full time. And yes, I'm still living in my sleepy little town of Santa Barbara, tucked between the ocean and the mountains. So my life has been crazy lately, but it's not the kind of crazy that makes you so tired that you don't want to do anything and you don't want to experience life. It's the kind of crazy that makes me excited to wake up in the morning and learn what I'm learning and then create the art that I want to create. So this has been a much needed 40th birthday gift to myself. So that's really the big update. I also now have a painting studio. I share it with some other people, so I've been trying to spend time in there. And now that I've given you a very thorough life update, I'd like to jump into the actual topic of today's podcast, and that is, how do I stay in recovery? Or how do I remain recovered? How do I find that healthy life of not fearing food and not feeling like I have to exercise my face off to enjoy a piece of chocolate cake or a cookie, or even just a rich meal like pasta with a bunch of cheese? This isn't an easy answer, and it's not one thing. It's a constant practice and a constant muscle that I have to work on to stay in recovery. And I will say the first 3 years was back and forth and a lot of undoing what many years of doing had done to me. Going through actual recovery with a private coach was incredibly beneficial to me in so many ways. Not only was it holding me accountable and checking in on me regularly, but there was so much to learn around nutrition and what actually makes your body function and how much you need to feel good and healthy and have all of the functions in your body actually work properly. And recovery is a huge part of learning that because it actually starts to happen in your body. So as you're starting to eat more food more regularly and your body gets out of fight or flight, you actually start to notice the difference in the benefits. And for me, it took a really long time to get out of fight or flight. I think it almost took the full 3 years of really being consistent with myself and allowing myself to go through the ups and downs of a little bit of weight gain and then, feeling down on myself, but knowing that I was on the right path. And body image was a whole other part of coming through to the other side. And not to mention just getting a little older on top of all of it. I also have been going to neurofeedback therapy since my hospitalization and working with a nutritionist since my hospitalization. And those two points of health have been the same people and really sticking next to me as I work through the bumps and the ups and downs and just keeping my brain in a healthy place. And even when I'm not healthy, admitting that I'm struggling. The neurofeedback therapy really helps me to keep my mood balanced and have healthy rhythms throughout the day. The overall mood balance throughout each day has been drastically better and different from having the support of neurofeedback therapy on top of nutrition. My nutritionist also continually educates me and helps me with the tiniest thing that I'm struggling with. And usually it comes down to consistency. And I easily get sick of cooking, or I get sick of having to even think about food and making that a thing in my life. It just seems like such a hassle sometimes. I'm not one of those natural foodies that's I can't wait to eat and I love eating. I'm not like that. I find eating to be tiresome, but that's why I have to lean so heavily on the benefits of eating, and it has gotten better for me. I have moved into a place that I now enjoy certain foods better or more, I should say. And I have found some joy in cooking because now I'm at a place where the recipes or the food I'm making actually turns out better because I'm adding flavor and things like butter and salt. Those are things I never used before. I wouldn't touch butter. I wouldn't even touch salt. A lot of times I wouldn't even use an oil. It was like I was eating a dry salad or sauteing food in water, which some of the diet culture people in the world say is better for you. And I just have to disagree. Maybe it is better. I don't know. It tastes terrible. And hey, if we're here on this earth for however long we are, we might as well enjoy taste. So I went from seeing my nutritionist, I think once a week or once every 2 weeks. And now I see her once every month or once every other month. And it's really just to do basic check-ins like, hey, how are your snacks doing? Are you eating every 3 to 4 hours? For my eating disorder coach that I worked with and my nutritionist, I've even done logs of what I eat, which for some people can be really triggering because when you have an eating disorder, that's one of the things that a lot of people do is they track what they're eating, but they track it in a different way where they're putting down calories and carbs and all this stuff and deciding like, oh, is that under 1,200 or is that more than 1,200? Whereas me, I was just basically writing down, this is what I ate. I wasn't worrying about calories or anything like that. It was just, here's the combinations I was eating and at times. And then we would sit down together and go over like, these were smart choices. This could be better. You could work on this here. And it was a process. And so how do I stay in this place of being recovered? It's hard. It's really hard because so much of it is mental. That's why therapy is so key. Having someone to talk to. It may not be therapy every week. It may not even be a therapist. It might be a coach. Whatever it is you choose, it's really important to have someone to talk to regularly about the struggles you're facing. And the first person is yourself. Once you have identified that something's coming up, that's when bringing someone else in can greatly benefit your journey to help you stay out of the mental state of all the things that come along with having an eating disorder, which could be, not liking the way your body looks or the way your body feels, or not even maybe liking food textures or the way food feels in your body, or worrying that you ate too much, or like feeling like you need to exercise more than you should, and just all those mental trips that come along with an eating disorder, which can be vast and very different between one person to the other. Scarcity usually shows up for me, so I'll feel like I don't have enough food, or I don't have enough options, or I don't have enough in my house. It could really show up in any category. That's a trigger for me. And so that's something I have to keep in check. Again, a lot of it comes down to my mental state. If I'm stressed, if I'm sad, if, my mental state is off at all, that could lead into altering eating habits. And coming to terms with that, I thought, wow, I'm really fragile. And the reality is that we all are really fragile, and we're all really flexible and really strong at the same time. Most of the time, I'm not hungry in the morning, especially if I make a warm drink. I still like hot tea or coffee in the morning. I always make sure to add cream, sugar, and collagen though. I never have coffee black. That is just too hard on for me. It's my adrenals and my hormonal system, really. It's just not a good match. And also the blood sugar spikes and all of that. So I always have a warm drink in the morning, and a lot of times I struggle to eat something first thing in the morning. And if I don't eat something, I won't eat for like 5 hours. And so that's one of the first things that I look at for staying in recovery for me, is making sure I have something to eat in the morning. This also often requires calm, slow, not rushed mornings. And those are hard to find, especially in our busy world. A lot of times I have a lot of options, and it was a battle to change my thinking around those choices. I had to think, this is not bad for me. This is not bad for me. I had to switch my intention every single morning for a very long time and switch it to, this is feeding my body so that it functions. This is waking up my systems. It is helping my liver work properly. It is helping my brain think, my body function, my energy levels rise. And it took me a long time to even feel those benefits, because for the first year in recovery, I felt heavy every time I ate. And my eating disorder coach would say, that will go away. You're just not used to it. And she was right. She was completely right. I wasn't used to it. I wasn't used to eating carbs. I wasn't used to eating big amounts of protein or fat. I definitely wasn't used to eating fats. But now when I eat a meal or a snack that has carbs, fat, and protein, it's crazy how good I feel afterwards. Even when I'm having a tired day, I'm like, oh, that actually gave me some energy and I feel clear in my head again. And another thing is eating every 3 to 4 hours, because otherwise my blood sugar drops and I start to notice it. I notice it in my vision, in the way my head feels. I notice it in my energy levels and the way my muscles feel. I'll need to take a nap if I don't. The choices can be healthy. Choosing snacks that aren't, a donut, because that actually doesn't make me feel good, eating a donut. But at the same time, if I eat one, I'm not going to be hard on myself because it's one donut. And on that note, I had to retrain my brain consistently every time I would make a choice like that. Like the moments I wanted a cookie, I would have a cookie and think, it's just one cookie. One cookie is not going to sabotage my life and body, because it won't. What harms a body and what sabotages the body is consistent poor choices over time, not one choice one day to eat something that has a little sugar in it. And learning that stuff was really crucial to staying in recovery. And it was a lot of work. It was a lot of practice. I had a note on my phone, or I guess a reminder that would pop up every day at 2 p.m. For some reason, 2 p.m. was a hard time. If I didn't eat breakfast, it would be like 2 p.m. when I would really feel a spike, or I guess a drop, like just a terrible moment of like, oh, I don't feel good. Or if I had breakfast, 2 o'clock was like, you are late for lunch. Like, what are you doing? And so 2 o'clock, I had a reminder on my phone that went off every single day for like 4 years that would say, you do not have to earn food. And that was a constant reminder for me. I even would write it down. I would make notes to myself. You do not have to earn food. You do not have to exercise to eat. You can eat for the joy of eating. Your body needs food even when it's just resting. So all that to say, most of what I was battling was mental. And that's a lot of people's struggle with eating disorders, is mental. And so when you feed your body and give your body nutrition, the mental stuff does start to clear up. There's always a residue because habits are strong. Once you have a habit, it is strong. It's embedded. So that's why it's a practice. It's a constant practice and reminder of all those little things coming together. Like me in the morning choosing to say yes to breakfast, even though I don't want to. I don't want to eat in the morning. I really don't, but I choose to. Like this morning, I had a crumpet with butter. And it was perfect. It was exactly perfect. I'm not going to get down on myself for having carbs or fat from the butter. I don't even care. I haven't even thought twice about it until right now when I told you I had a crumpet for breakfast. And crumpets are honestly like a treat for me. They're just not something I usually buy. So having a crumpet was like, ooh, this is lovely. This is like a treat. And thankfully, I have grown to like cooking a lot more, but you don't have to like cooking to stay in recovery. There's so many options out there that help people to make choices around food and, eat healthy. And sometimes healthy food is expensive. And that's also a problem, which, I've talked about this in a previous episode with my friend Patrick. And it's really one of those things that I struggle with, is having resources and being able to take care of yourself in that way. And it's not always available, but I do think things have gotten a little better. And when I say a little better, I just think about places like, Trader Joe's. You can go in and you can get a sandwich or a salad for like $4, under $5. I used to trip out on canola oil. I would talk to my nutritionist about it over and over again. Like, I'm just trying not to eat all the canola oil because, canola oil isn't great for you. What trumps worrying about canola oil is the fact that my body just needs calories. It needs nutrients. And if I put the intention into it, my body needs this and it's really good for my body, it's not going to be a big deal. So I've leaned heavily into intention, and some of you may not believe that that is a big thing in food, but it really is. And so I really had to find a love for food, and that looks different for each person. Sometimes that means going out and having a nice meal at a restaurant or getting your food to go from somewhere. Like, I still get lunches to go a lot because lunch just stumps me. I don't really mind cooking breakfast or preparing breakfast, and I really don't mind preparing dinner, but for some reason, if I don't have leftovers for lunch, creating a lunch is like absolutely daunting to me. So I have had to really come to terms with, hey, it's okay to eat out. I didn't grow up eating out. And so that was a little bit of a barrier for me to realize that like it's totally normal to go get lunch out somewhere and let someone else prepare it for you and enjoy it. I'm also more of a snacker and I'm not a big meal person. I really kind of have always lived by like, okay, I only eat to like 60-70%. Having an eating disorder, I would eat even less. But I still, even after being recovered, I'm still not a huge fan of like eating to fullness. I find for my body and for my brain, it slows me down and makes me feel sluggish. So that was a fun thing to explore and learn about myself. Was when I was in recovery, I was eating to more of a full place. I was doing more of an all-in approach, eating whatever I felt like whenever I did. And I felt full pretty quick because my body wasn't used to it. But once my body got out of fight or flight and I started to feel better, I noticed that, you know what? Hey, I still like only eating to like 70%. And so that allows for snacks, which I love snacking. I've always loved it. It's like definitely I'd rather snack than eat a meal. And so I've leaned heavily into that and just created really great snacks for myself that include fats, carbs, and proteins. And so it's like a combination of things to help me get energy. And then I don't feel bad about like not wanting to eat a whole meal all the time. So a lot of staying in recovery is also having grace for yourself and for your options and choices and decisions and desires and accepting them. Acceptance is such a huge part of the road of recovery. And this goes for, I think, everyone, is accepting their body as it changes, accepting their choices, accepting the way they want to live. I don't like feeling full, but I also don't like being hungry. And so I had to come to terms with having to eat more often because I didn't like being full and I didn't like being hungry. So that meant that sometimes I ate every 2 hours rather than every 3 to 4 hours, depending on what I had eaten prior. A lot of it is learning about yourself and letting all of that be okay as you learn. Now that I'm in school to learn about Chinese medicine, I will say my desire for nutrition has risen. I was almost worried about becoming a little obsessive over it because that is a tendency I have, and it's also a tendency of eating disorders. But rather, it's allowed me to grow in my desire to have proper nutrition so that my body functions at its best. The more I learn about body systems, and the cool thing is that we learn Chinese medicine, but we also learn Western medicine, not to the extent that Western doctors learn. I have really learned like, whoa, if you don't have enough nutrition, your body is struggling. And sometimes it takes a long time to know that it's struggling, which is crazy how strong and powerful our bodies are, but they're also fragile. And finding that optimization is definitely a mix of things, but a lot of it comes from nutrition. I spent a lot of time paying for the New Yorker recipe app. I forget what it's called right now. I think it's just New Yorker recipes or something. It was so robust and easy for me to use. I would just choose category and choose a recipe and I would use it. And I will say that takes time and also finances to be able to do stuff like that. But that really helped me in recovery. And a lot of times I was just doing like 4 a week. I wouldn't do one every day, but I would, cooking for yourself, just one person, can be a little daunting. You're like, oh, I have leftovers. How much do I cook? This isn't as fun just cooking for myself. But I really had to make it fun. And this is another area where my coach helped a lot. She was like, light a candle, put some music on, make it fun. Whatever that means for you, make it fun. And so sometimes I would listen to music, sometimes I would listen to an audiobook, sometimes I would cook in silence with a candle lit and, making my cooking area as nice as I could, buying spices that I really liked. And then other times I would actually watch a movie or a show because I just was like, you know what, I'm having a hard time cooking today. I need a little help. And at times I ordered those services that drop off meals for you and you just kind of prepare them. I really, really liked those, but I just couldn't afford them in the long term. I also found that if I grew my own food, which sometimes I just don't have time for and space really, I loved that process so much. I found so much joy in collecting the food that I grew and then cooking it. That was such a pleasure. And then also farmers markets, which sometimes I don't make time for. And when I start buying meat and stuff from the farmer's market, it is more expensive than other ways. So sometimes I just can't make that work for myself, even though I would love to only support locally for all of my meals. It just doesn't always happen. But when I buy at the farmer's market, it does feel more special to then cook that food. It's like the exchange with the farmer and then bringing home this organic, beautiful, colorful array of items and then cooking them. That's just fun and magical. So being in recovery is a mix of a lot of magic coming together. It's a lot of practice. It's a lot of patience and acceptance. It's a lot of working out the mental stressors and struggles. And it's also working out life, not letting things raise your stress too high. For me, stress is a trigger, but I should say knowing your triggers. If your trigger is anxiety or your trigger is stress, maybe your trigger is loneliness or sadness. It's knowing those things and finding them, which if you're struggling to find them, sometimes talking to a professional can help. And then doing your best to try to minimize those triggers. Sometimes we can't take stress away or anxiety or especially loneliness. Like those things can't just disappear. But sometimes there's little things we can do to help mitigate it. Like if you're stressed and anxious, sometimes just a walk can drastically help change the way that feels. Or even rest, making enough time to sleep longer or sleeping in or going to bed early or even making time for a nap. I had to take a lot of little sacrifices to work on these things for myself. And it really did look like taking a nap rather than playing or saying no to exercise and yes to a yoga class instead, just to manage my stress and anxiety and feel a little better. And sometimes that looked like hopping on YouTube and, looking up a yoga class because I didn't want to figure out my own practice or I couldn't go to a studio because it just felt overwhelming. And also learning body cues. I didn't have hunger for a long time. And over time, when my body started to leave fight or flight, that started to reappear for me. And that was a new sensation to experience and work with. And I learned that if I wait until I'm really hungry, I don't feel so good and I don't make good decisions and I can't make decisions. But if I catch those really early signs, which again, this took a while for me to start to look at and realize what was happening, then I felt better because I could eat before I was too far gone. Recovery is a lot of learning oneself, deep diving, being honest, really accepting the parts of you that you don't want to accept, like maybe the little extra that's on your legs or belly that is stubborn and doesn't want to go away, because trust me, I have it too, and I've come to terms with it, or I continually try to at least. Learning and loving the fact that your body has to do so many processes to exist in the world, and it's a pretty magical process. And so for someone who's on their journey or trying to be recovered or not ready, and maybe you're still in denial and you're not really sure, just watching a video on like how the body functions is pretty life-changing. I've actually been watching a lot of videos from the Amoeba Sisters. It's really kind of like a science biology channel. And I'm learning so much about how little things make a big difference, like eating proteins for your brain. And also when you have an injury or even just surgery, not just surgery, but when you have surgery or an injury, it's like eating properly is what's going to heal you along with rest. But eating. Like you don't just get electrolytes from existing, and you can't just grab protein out of the air. Having a team of people that you can count on is so crucial to health, and sometimes being able to afford that isn't an option. And that's why there are some resources out in the world that don't require insurance or money to get help. Some of these resources are on my website, and I definitely would like to add to that. I just haven't, but knowing that some resources are out there is obviously helpful. And sometimes you can find a really good friend who will be on your team and support you when you need supporting. And sometimes that's a lot for one person. So making sure you have a few people that you can reach out to and just be reminded that, hey, you're not alone. You do need nutrients. You need food. Or maybe even just calling a couple people and be like, hey, are you willing to like eat a meal with me every week or every other week? that was a huge part of my recovery as well, is that I shared a meal with people, I think 2 or 3 times a week for dinner. That was honestly life-changing. And it's something I can still lean into now. I can call a friend and say, hey, do you want to grab lunch or dinner? And the other thing that keeps me in recovery is not wanting to feel the way I used to feel, which is sad, empty, lost, really depressed, hyper anxious, missing out on all social activities, not being close to people, feeling scarce all the time, constant stress, continually hating on myself and my body, hating food, hating existing. I dread going back to that. I don't even think I could at this point. And releasing control. Releasing control has been huge. It's a constant battle. I haven't fully done it, but just easing up a little bit, releasing the control of if I didn't eat and I go to a party, there's going to be something I can eat there. Obviously, this is different for people with allergies or actual medical restrictions. So this is not necessarily advice, but that was such a big relief for me to know that I had an event and there was going to be food there. And I just let myself go, knowing I'd be hungry when I arrive and enjoying what was there. And luckily today, a lot of people will give you a heads up like, hey, we're going to be having sandwiches and pasta or whatever. And, I don't necessarily will go to like a shrimp party because I'm allergic. Outside of that, it's really exciting to know that I've grown so much that I can go to a party and eat the food and not think twice about it and not overeat when I approach the table like I used to, because I was so hungry that if I went to a party with food, I would fear eating too much, or I would just fear what was going to be on the table. Is there going to be carbs there? Is there going to be cheese? Will they have like fatty foods that I believe in my heart that will make me fat after eating one bite, which is crazy. It doesn't. And to be clear, for those of you who have not had an eating disorder or don't struggle with it, it's not actually only about becoming overweight from eating. This is a mental disorder that is rooted in control and lack of control and trauma. And body image is a tag along in the process. I kind of look at it like the fear of lack of control turns you into obsession over something that's completely non-related to the actual issue. And also, we live in a society and a world that just absolutely gives gold medals to all the uber thin people. And every body is different and requires a different amount of calories per day and a different amount of weight on their body. Some people eat crazy healthy and their body wants to be at a certain weight. And that's just how their body is. That's how it feels comfortable existing in the world. And that is a combination of so many factors that I don't even fully understand, and processes and symptoms, and also just life circumstances and traumas and maybe their stress levels, anxiety levels, like all of that stuff plays a role in how your body exists in the world. And so I hope this helps to understand what it's like to remain in recovery. And the biggest piece I want to leave all of you with is the knowing the deeper parts of yourself and being strong and courageous to go into those places of yourself and learn what they are. Learn your triggers, make ways, tips, tricks, plans to stay in a better place than in those triggers, or learn how to deal with those triggers when they arise in healthier ways, and having people who know, people who you can count on. And if it's not a professional, having a team of friends that are good friends that you can call and say, hey, can we grab a meal? I'm struggling today. Another thing I forgot to mention is the rest and digest space when you're eating. That's not always achievable, especially in our rushed, hectic environment of working and not having enough time in the day. If your body is stressed and rushed, it most likely won't want to eat. And so starting to have a practice around saving a little time to sit down and enjoy food. That could be 20 minutes. Like sometimes I do this a lot for lunch. I'll sit down for lunch and I'll listen to something like a book or a meditation or something just to really calm my body down, because if I'm having a busy morning or a busy afternoon, I generally don't want to save time to rest and eat. I'm thinking about all the things I have to do. And so it's absolutely crucial to say, hey, this is a priority over my busy life, and I'm going to sit down and give this time and honor this moment, because that's more important than making sure I check something off of my list. And you have to really get comfortable with not making excuses around that. Like, my work's more important. This is more important. And some things are more important, obviously, but some things aren't. They're not as important as we make them out to be. But feeding your body is absolutely a priority. And that's all I have for today. I hope that you all are doing so well, and reach out. Let me know where you are, what you're thinking, leave a comment. Also, reviews always help. Send me an email. My website is listed below, and I'll also say it at the end here. Let me know how you're doing. And I so appreciate everyone who's stuck through and waited for this episode to come out. I deeply apologize for my lag and for just setting this project down while I work out some of my own stuff and not making this a priority when I really wanted to make it a priority. I definitely do not plan on putting this project down the way I had prior. I hope you all continue to listen and share this with a friend if you think it might help them. And take note, some people who are in an eating disorder are heavily in denial and might push you away if you do try to help them. But if you feel called, maybe you send it to them. I don't know. That's really up to you. That's not advice. I wouldn't have taken it well if someone had done that for me. But at the same time, I wish someone had. Cheers to you all, and I hope all of you are having a lovely spring. Thank you for being here. You can find me on Instagram and the web. Instagram is at @thishishardtosay with a period between each word. The website is www.thishishardtosay.me. My more personal and graphic design account is at @ChelseaWillett_designs. Those will also be in the show notes below. If you want to support this project and podcast, there's a few ways to do so. You can head to my website, click the support button in the top right of the navigation, and that will lead you to how to help. You can also submit your own story anonymously, or you can share who you are. If this podcast spoke to you, it would be so appreciated to subscribe, leave a review, click some stars, and share it with your people. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.